To Kenya now, and ahead of Thursday's vote, there have been more protests. Police fired tear gas on crowds in Nairobi's CBD, and there were clashes too in the western city of Kisumu, an opposition stronghold. Thousands marched on the offices of the Electoral Commission. They say there will be no voting in Kisumu without electoral reforms. The protesters' political leader, Raila Odinga, has promised a statement on his next move. The government had banned political rallies, but there are no signs that opposition supporters will back off.
I have been in the struggle for the second liberation for 37 years. When the government refuses to listen, we demonstrate. And demonstrations have always worked. I'm serious. Even this time, demonstrations will work. Are we together? Are we together? Therefore, we shall continue to condemn it, demonstrating in peace, to tell the Kenyan government today, October.
Well, let's now get you the latest, and we're joined live from Kisumu on the shores of Lake Victoria in Kenya by Susan Mongeli. Susan, it's been a day of street protests in Kisumu. What's the situation like now, and should we expect more demonstrations on Thursday?
Well, after a very chaotic day, things have calmed down, or at least in the evening, things sort of calmed down and the tensions were a bit low. But basically, the whole day we saw a lot of running battle between police officers and demonstrators. Now, the demonstrations began quite peacefully, and we saw the leaders coming out and asking the demonstrators to exercise restraint, that they were going to have a peaceful election. Not a peaceful election, but they're going to have a peaceful demonstration. But later on, when they went to Kondele, a market which is known for having several violent protests, then all hell broke loose, and we had youth throwing stones at the police officers, who I must say initially they expressed, or rather they expressed a lot of restraint. They really contained themselves, but I think it got to a point where they really had to react, and that's when we saw the police use force to disperse the crowds. But every so often you'd see them push back, and there'd be a lot of running battles, but ultimately things calmed down. But one thing we noticed is that a lot of, and with most demonstrations, a lot of these people are very young, and for them they feel they're disenfranchised, and for them taking part in such demonstrations, they feel that at least they're taking part in a cause that might lead to the betterment of their future, and that's why we've seen a lot of them come out to participate in these demonstrations. But generally, after a very hectic day, things have calmed down, and now we wait for tomorrow, which they say will be the mother of all protests.
Susan, let's talk a bit more about Kisumu. It's a stronghold of the opposition, as we know, and it's calling for a boycott of the repeat presidential poll. What's the security deployment like there, and are we likely to see any voting taking place?
Well, let me begin with a bit about voting, because during the demonstrations, all people that we spoke to, they say that there will be no election in at least in Kisumu and the several districts that are in the county. So most of them say that there will, unless there are reforms or unless something very very significant happens, there will be no elections. But just generally, when you talk about police deployment, there is heavy security in Kisumu. Almost everywhere you walk, you'll find security deployed everywhere. But as I say, the police are trying to keep it friendly, because they've been accused before of using excessive force. The people, human rights organizations have accused the police of brutality, and so with this they're playing really safe, and we haven't heard of any incidents as of yet. But tomorrow being the D-Day, and with a lot of uncertainty, we don't know what will happen, but yeah, basically there's a lot of security deployment around, and yes, people will be coming out tomorrow for another demonstration, and no, according to the people, there will be no election come on the 26th, that is on Thursday.
Okay, Susan Mongeli there in Kisumu on the shores of Lake Victoria in Kenya. Thank you very much for that update.